What up, though? And welcome to another episode of the Corrected Felon Podcast with me, your host, Inspire the Block, aka the Triple OG, aka the Lone Wolf, aka the Corrected Felon. That's a new one I'm trying out, so work with me on that one. But also known to my friends and family as simply Corey. What up, though? I pray everybody out there in listening or viewing land is living in their purpose. And also, whatever distress or shit you going through, I pray that you find healing and the answers that you need to bounce back from whatever it is. But once again, thank everybody. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all because once again, over here on the Corrected Felon Podcast, if you've been rocking with your boy, you know we have substantive conversations. And if you're living under a rock somewhere or you're not just paying attention to the current news cycle, then you somehow have been either intellectually, excuse me, or emotionally connected to the verdict and trial of Karmelo Anthony, the young black boy who was recently down in Texas convicted of first degree murder and sentenced to 35 years in the Texas Department of Corrections for the murder of Austin Metcalf, a white young male student athlete, and it sent shockwaves, like I said, either intelligently or emotionally throughout America. Now, it's a couple of things. Now, what I don't want to do is relitigate the whole case. That ain't what I want to do. All right. Even though there may be a bunch of discrepancies, for example, throughout the current news cycle, people have been saying that it was an all white jury. The judge is white, the prosecutor is white, of course, the victim is white, the victim's family is white, and then people believe that all this has a connection in some kind of way. Maybe it does, and it may be the reason for the verdict and the sentence. It may does. However, I'm not here to litigate that part of it because, for one, I didn't follow the trial all the way through. I followed the headlines and the clicks, like like majority of people do nowadays. We want everything in a we want everything in a microwave fashion. Excuse me, but I did follow it enough to where I think the information that I did, retain was thorough enough. It was valid and it was true. But once again, I don't want to relitigate the evidence or the trial of the case because I think there's a lot of things that's connected to it that's on the outside of it. Like for example, us to where these situations, how we can resolve them, right? If we feel like there's an injustice that has happened, how do we resolve these issues so that other young black men, young black boys receive justice, or young black men, period, receive justice in these halls of justice, as they're called, or courtrooms. I'm somebody I know all too well about, man, courtrooms. Not that I'm a career anything, right? But if you follow me, you've been fucking with me for a long time, then you know that I did some time in prison. So of course, the only way to go to prison, you got to go through a courtroom. And you want to know anything about all that, go ahead. But one part of my history I will connect to Karmelo Anthony is the youth of him being sentenced once again to 35 years in prison. And once again, black people feel like in America that shit was wrong. And once again, I'm gonna talk just a little bit about that aspect of it, but not the trial in itself. Excuse me. As black people, and I believe that I can speak for black people because I'm black. I'm from Flint, Michigan, born and raised. I live down here in Atlanta, Georgia, on the west side to be exact. Been black all my life. I've been nothing else. So I think I am I can have a voice in the black community. I think as black people, one of the things that we got to stop doing if we want to correct these ills or these injustices that go on in our community, then we have to get more active locally like we should. The biggest problem that we face in America, especially in the black communities, is that we don't engage like we should on a local and a state level, or as I like to call it, local politics matter. Local politics has the biggest impact on our lives, regardless if you know it or not. For example, for all y'all that wherever you listening to this at or viewing it at, if you're a 9-to-5 worker, go look at your state taxes on your last paycheck. Go look at your state taxes and you answer that question for me. Right? How much did you pay in state taxes out of your last paycheck? Compared to your federal taxes, Social Security, and whatever other taxes you may have to pay in your state, in your city. But the most that you're going to pay, the biggest taxes you're going to pay is Social Security for one, and number two is going to be a state tax. We don't understand the importance of knowing how and who, first how our local city hall works. Not enough of us pay more of that attention. We don't understand how our judicial and our county system works in our county. We don't, for the most part, we don't understand how our state legislator works. Like, these are the people that we vote on to shape the policies of our everyday lives where we live at, either on the state and the local level. Like, we don't give that much attention. Like, we understand the presidency to some extent. Some of us do. We understand the federal government to some extent. Most of us do. But a lot of us don't really know how the local and state works. We really give the Trump card, no pun intended, but we give like the ace card to the federal government when really the ace card belongs to the local and the state level. So what does this have to do with what I'm talking about, local politics? What does that have to do with the Karmelo Anthony situation? And also to, what is the young brother name that everybody's upset about in South Carolina? The young boy that was murdered by the store clerk. Give me one moment, South Carolina. Gas station. Anyway, I think the young black boy was killed down there in South Carolina by a gas station owner who chased him down. Asian guy chased him down, shot him in the back because he thought that he was stealing a bottled water. And it was a lot to that trial. And the Asian guy was found out guilty, even though there was video footage of showing him chase the young guy down and then shooting at him. Okay, so people were still outraged about that, and then the Karmelo Anthony murder trial happened, and he was found guilty. Now, once again, how am I tying all this into local politics? And the reason why we're having this conversation, because I just want to make sure that y'all are educated to some extent on how important the matter is that we engage locally. Let's say, for example, let's go back to the Karmelo Anthony trial. Okay, let's go to that verdict. One of the outcries here in America is that the jury was all white. And, Karmelo Anthony should have had a jury of his peers, as is articulated, throughout the Constitution. One of the problems with that, and we have to admit this, we really, really got to come to a collective consensus on this thing here. If we want to change those kind of outcomes, then we got to start answering the summons of jury duty. Like, y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about. We not going to even sit here and act like people don't get them papers. They come in the mail and say that you got jury duty. One or two things happen. People just don't respond to them. Or number two, they do everything in their power not to be seated on the jury. Recently, my son had jury duty, and I explained to him the importance of you should try to go be seated on this jury. For one, you don't know what the case is about, and number two, you can provide justice in our state properly based on the information that you know of what I went through as a juvenile in the Michigan Department of Corrections, and also the court system in Michigan. I'm like, you can have an active say in that. What did he do? Because he didn't want to go through it. For one, he didn't want to take off work. He didn't like the compensation that the state was giving him if he was seated on the jury. He didn't want to make a little few peanuts compared to what he make at work. And he didn't want to give up his time to do that. And so what he did was did everything in his power so that he wouldn't be seated on the jury. And of course, you know, in any jury pool or any jury selection process, if there isn't enough black people, local DAs ain't tripping about that. So what we got to do, seriously, we got to actively get involved with that. We got to figure out a way to get ourselves more involved in the jury process to make sure that we have better outcomes in our community for our people. But once again, this is a local politics matter thing. Like, local organizers should be pushing this hard. Local community activists should be pushing this hard. This should be a new idea in America based on the injustice that we believe Karmelo Anthony received because he had an all-white jury. Then we have to find a way to start to be seated on these juries. That's the solution in my eyes. Unfortunately, I can't do it because I'm a convicted felon. Even if I, by chance, be able to be seated on the jury, the local DA gonna think that I'm biased. I would be biased because of my felony conviction and automatically dismiss me as a juror. But it's a lot of y'all out there that can be seated on the jury that need to do it more often. Answer the bell to it. It may not happen overnight where we change the judicial system with this idea or this strategy, but we'll begin the process of it, especially if you live in areas where you know you're going to be needed in that particular part of our judicial system. For example, I'm from Flint, Michigan, born and raised. Genesee County, okay? Genesee County outside of Flint, it gets wider and wider and wider. But the city of Flint is the hub of Genesee County where most black people reside at, where they live at. So if more black people in Flint, Michigan decided to engage politically like they do on a federal level, then the residents of Flint, Michigan will have a lot more power, a lot more political capital to have a voice and not let these injustices happen. This is the same model that can go on in a lot of areas because, once again, in most black cities on the outskirts, it's predominantly white. Unless you live somewhere like down here in Atlanta. I live in Fulton County. Fulton County is a very, very big county, and the majority of it is black. That's the privilege that we have of living down here in Atlanta County, in Atlanta, Georgia, and Fulton County. But in other areas, yeah, you have to raise that voice. You have to answer the call, once again, when you're summoned for jury duty. Like I say, a lot of y'all know what I'm talking about out there. Y'all get them goddamn letters. You get them. Especially if you're a registered voter. You get them letters. Stop throwing them away. And start to encourage each other so that we can make sure, once again, that situations like this with Karmelo Anthony does not happen. Or like out there in South Carolina, right? Out there in South Carolina where the Asian guy got found not guilty for murder. But I don't know the jury. Let me put that disclaimer out there. I don't know the jury pool out there. I can only imagine that it was predominantly white too. But if more black people sat on that jury, then the outcome will be different than what it is now. The Asian guy would have been held to justice. Because clearly that was a very, very different situation. We saw it on camera, okay? The boy was leaving. He was shot in the back. The situation with Karmelo Anthony, it was one poke from a little from a knife. If my understanding, they had one of them little hunting knives, little things with all the other little gadgets attached to it. It wasn't even that. Just unfortunately, what happened. So once again, we have to engage politically in this process. That's number one. Like I said, we have to try to figure out a program. Once again, all you community activists out there, you politicians that's running on a local and state level, we got to come up with an idea for this. We got to come up with a plan for this to get more black people on jurors. This should be something that's constantly campaigned about now, especially when these two cases that we just saw, the one in South Carolina and the one in Texas. Okay? Two different spectrums. One black boy being murdered and justice, we feeling like justice didn't prevail. And another one should be a self-defense in a lot of people's eyes, but we also feel like justice didn't prevail in that aspect as well. So the only way to get involved in this, we got to be seated on the jury. Number two, once again, I said local politics matter, okay? Now, in instances like this, for example, when we have an outcry judicially, we have to use our vote in the way that we should use our vote, because on a local level, the local DA or district attorney is voted on. And if you come from a predominantly black city to where when he's running for office, he has to come through that city. More black people have to be engaged in the conversation on how he's going to prosecute as a whole for that county, instead of giving the surrounding areas where mostly white people live at the more power in the say, because they show up all the time. They do. I can give you an example. My employer, who I works for, he knows all the city council members' names in Sandy Springs, Georgia. He knows how long construction is going to take. I mean, one thing about it, he's always learning either information about what goes on in his community of Sandy Springs, or he's actively involved. Like, shit, you come up to our shop, you'll see people's signs out there whom he's supporting because he's involved. And so we have to take up this same kind of mindset when it comes to our community. We got to get involved in the election process with our vote, and stop just blindly voting as black people. Like, one of the major outcries in the black community is that we feel that police brutality is wrong. And that when an unarmed black man is murdered by a police officer, we feel like the police officer should be held responsible for that act no differently than somebody else would who would that wasn't a police officer would have done it themselves. But who has the power to prosecute police officers for the murder of unarmed black men in the black community? Who has that power? The local DA, the man or woman whom you vote for. They have that power to do that. But because we don't engage in that part of the electoral process, a lot of us, we don't have that connection, and we think that they're supposed to do it. But when in reality, they don't care to do it because they won't be held responsible, because they know black people are going to vote for them again, especially on a local level, because these guys can stay in office forever, it seems like. Right? There's no term limits on a local level. These people are voted into office. Right? Your mayor, your local mayors, he turns around once you vote he or she in office, they turn around and appoint the police chief, who turns around and hires the police officers. You see how this shit works? But it's all based on your vote. So boom, on the next mayoral cycles, when they come up in your local areas, go to those meetings. Go to those meetings when they're out there campaigning. Talk to them and ask them questions. When you hire your next police chief, in the event, hopefully it doesn't happen, that an unarmed black man is murdered in our city and in our county, will they be held responsible if the evidence shows that they should be responsible? These are the kind of conversations that you can have with your local mayors and with your local DAs. Real shit. You can go to their offices. Like, for example, down here in Atlanta, Georgia, I live in Fulton County. If I want to go to talk to Fannie Willis, I can go right downtown, knock on that door. May have to still set up a meeting if she's available. But at the same time, at least I can get that. I have that access to her. But when this kind of shit happens, we want we want prosecution from the federal government to happen. But once again, you don't vote for the Attorney General of the United States. He's appointed to that office. So you're limited to the access that you have to these people. But that's what we expect the people to come from to correct the wrongs on the state and local level, when in essence, once again, we hold the power. We hold all the power. And so therefore, when we start to really vote for these people in office, we really got to start vetting them. But that's just one of the things we don't want to do. We just want the popularity contest. And so as long as we paying attention to the popularity contest, we always going to be looking at that shiny object in the sky, which is the federal government. That's where we're always going to be at. Right? We always going to be crying about what's going on wrong on a local level because we too caught up on what's going on the federal level. So these are one or two ways that we can start to correct these problems in our community. Like I said, show up for jury duty. Gotta show up for jury duty. Number two, start to vet all of your local district attorneys, judges, and mayors as they're running. Really, really, put them through the fire. Start to show up for them, for these conversations, so that they can be had. So that put them on a record saying what they would do if these situations happen, likely to happen or arise. You already have a record of what the fuck they said they would do and how they respond to it. So now they happen. You got the record. You present the record. Boom. Is there's another election cycle? Now, next candidate, he fucked up on this or she fucked up on this. They lied to us. They didn't do it. How would you do it? And they know how serious it is because now the vote is going to swing. That's how local politics happen. This is why local politics matter. The third one is this here, and I think the third one is one of the most important ones. It's part of the game. And that is start investing financially in our local politics. Yep. If you somebody of financial, stability, you doing okay, get behind certain campaigns, because now you have a direct access to how shit flows and how it goes on throughout your community. Like, once again, my employer who I work for, he'll invest. He'll make donations. He'll make donations to campaigns, especially locally, because he wants to have a connection to the information that's going to affect his business. He get it firsthand. And he get the opportunity. If he don't like certain shit going on in his community, he can go to the person who he know he didn't financially invested into their campaign. Hey man, I don't like this shit here. Can we do something about it? For real. That's how it works. For example, if you're in an area like us for code enforcement, man, if you got a plug already in City Hall or somewhere, man, get these motherfuckers up off my ass. You already got the plug because you didn't donate it to the campaign. What are you going to say? No? Especially if you're a nice kind of campaign donor. This is why they always say the Democrats love to, only fall to their donors and sponsors. Or fold to them. Why not do it on a local level? This is the way that we actually can start to make change in America if we just pay attention to our local and state politics. Fuck getting caught up on the federal level. Because as long as that's where our attention is, we going to always have situations like Karmelo Anthony and also like the young brother out there. What's Cypress, I believe, something like that, in South Carolina, where the Asian guy killed him and the Asian guy got found not guilty. So, what we going to do? Continue to keep complaining, bitching, moaning about the situation, or we're going to provide some type of change. Now, I will end the conversation with this here. And it's with Karmelo Anthony, okay? 35 years in prison for a 19-year-old. I have a very, very big problem with that. Because in essence, that's a virtual life sentence. And once again, I didn't follow all of the testimony. I didn't follow all of the trial like that. The information that I did gather was just from, areas of news online that I believe is a credible source. So I followed it from there. But I didn't watch it like on crime TV or whatever, the court TV. I didn't watch it every day like that to follow it. Because for one, I think cameras weren't allowed in. I think if cameras would have been allowed in the courtroom, I probably would have followed it a little bit more, but I didn't. And I know what it's like to be sentenced to a lot of time as a juvenile. And I think that is wrong. I think that's right there. And that is something that we got to continue to fight for, juvenile justice. We need to have guidelines to where I don't give a damn where you're at. I think it should be now this is where we can start from a federal, which it has been. But we have to get more engaged, once again, locally, so that we can get these laws changed to where that type of time, a guideline shouldn't happen for those type of cases. Like, that shouldn't be. The judge shouldn't have been. Well, from my understanding, he gave a statement, and I'll get back to that in the very near future. But he didn't. He said he sleeps well at night, giving him that sentence. But once again, we got to get more actively involved locally so that these type of things wouldn't happen and these laws don't exist to where juveniles can be sentenced to that type of time. Because that's just too much. I know, that's justice for the victims. That's another conversation to be had. But once again, we're still talking about the whole ideal of undeveloped brains in children. These were children on both ends. Sad. And I wish that, like the father, the shit I've been seeing online with him, which don't get it twisted, he's a victim. He lost a son. I understand it all too well. But I wish he had a little bit more compassion. Because he still want worse, for Karmelo Anthony and his family. So I think that's wrong. But once again, it's a local politic matter. That's all that it is. It's a local and state politic matter. And until we as black people understand that, in essence, as a whole, we'll be still fighting ghosts that ain't even there, right? So once again, welcome to the Corrected Felon Podcast. Make sure y'all please subscribe, like, comment, share it. Please download it wherever you find your audio or you listen to your favorite audio podcast at. Follow the show, subscribe to it. And until next time, y'all have a blessed day on purpose.